Maria, thank you for answering this question. This is really important. One of the questions I get a lot is, how do I get press mentions? And people are just fascinated by getting their name out there, and they should, right? Everybody's trying to be a thought leader. And I know you work on this specifically. So what are some tips that you can give an entrepreneur who's trying to get their name out there as much as possible?
Sure. And that's really something that tends to be difficult for a lot of people when they first think about it. Like, ooh, how do I get in the press? It's not easy. We think of the press as what you see in the news, but for a business, it's a little bit different. But there's really a lot of opportunities to actually have press mentions just naturally. And it really, it all begins with you sharing your expertise and what your company does. Whether that's you contributing, an answer to, a topic, your local newspaper, your local chamber of commerce, associations, being that helpful, expert that can go in and say, hey, I know this content, I know this topic, I can share it with you. That's going to give you a lot of opportunities to get some press there. Digitally, there's a lot of content out there. There's so many publications that fall within your industry that you can definitely reach out to and say, hey, I see that you target this audience. I have, X amount of expertise in this area. Would love to share something about this topic with your audience. So that's one great thing that you can do. Other things that you can do is, try to put something out there that's valuable to your industry. So if you have lots of statistics about your customers, your particular area that you can pull together into a research, that would be something that people want to see. They want to share it. The industry needs that.
Right.
So if there's things like that you can put together.
First party research.
Exactly. Again, and this could be any type of company can have that. Even a local company, say you're into restoration of, homes, let's say there was, a big flood or something, you can put together, your research of, this area had this many, homes impacted, and here's the cost, the average cost of restoration. That's research that people want to see. And those are things that are going to get picked up by newspapers, different online resources. So anything you can provide that's, valuable, that's coming from you and your information of what you own, that's going to be a great way to do it as well.
And obviously there's tools like Help a Reporter Out and things like that to keep tabs on what's happening in the industry. And what else do you recommend? And that's something anybody can do.
Right.
You can hire an intern to help you do that.
Correct. There's a lot of news outlets. Other things you can do is even just keep track of where people are mentioning your brand and reaching out to those individuals and say, hey, I'd like to even provide more. Right. You can also keep tabs on your competitors. And if you see that your competitors are consistently being featured or talked about in different, whether it's an online blog or publication or industry blog, anything like that, you can always say, hey, I know that, you often feature XYZ company, we'd love to, participate in, whatever it is that they do as well.
First of all, they need to know you exist.
Exactly.
Otherwise, how are they going to know? And also, you should also have a track record of creating content on a regular basis so people know that you are the expert. Because you don't have to worry about, you don't need anybody's permission to create YouTube video content about your industry, and right? You don't have to worry about creating content and all of those things that you can do without the media. But when they do see you, they know that you are out there. There's more reason to mention you.
Exactly. And that also even goes to doing local things. You can sponsor things. You can, contribute to different things. So if there's a local association that would be, helped if you went and educated, their members. Right. And then you videotape that session. Now you put it up on YouTube. There's things like that. Just because you help them, now they're going to help you get the word out about your company and what you do. And that just opens up opportunities for others talking about you.
And I think in many cases, it's an art. To get mentions, you really have to be creative. You have to reach out, always be networking, always be outreaching, creating connections, and then adding value to somebody else's life, right? Why should the author or the editor of another website, a publication, should care that you exist? You need to have something of value to give it to them so that they can add that into their own thing, because they're really busy people too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even if you go traditional and say try to get featured in the local newspaper or anything like that, you can't just reach out to an editor and say, hey, you know, can you do a feature story about me? It's like, well,
Cover
why
page.
would they?
Right.
But, you know, if you see something where, hey, you know, I noticed you had a great story, you know, about this topic, you know, if there's a follow-up, you know, I can contribute this, or there's something else, I'd like to share something with you. Or if you know, that they're looking for particular types of content and you're able to provide that, again, being that helpful resource is going to get you further than just hoping that someone's going to do a feature about you.
Right. And we do this for clients and we call that digital PR because business people are busy. They don't have time to follow up with publications and pitch articles and things like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that process is like?
Sure.
Just so, you know, if somebody wanted to do that on their own, they can kind of get an idea.
It's definitely, you know, a full-time job. It's not send a couple of emails and you're done. It's all about starting with who do you want to be in the industry? Who do you want to be known as? Then once we know that, you know, we try to identify publications and outlets that target that audience that would be a good source for you. So again, it could be a variety of things. It could be in, magazines, blogs, news publications. It depends on your business, right? Once we know those are the right audiences for you, then, you know, there's things like looking at their editorial calendars and saying, hey, you know what, upcoming in March, they're going to have, you know, a full focus on this topic, and we fit in perfectly because that's exactly what we do or what we know. So then again, being that helpful person and then, you know, gathering the context, who is it that you need to reach out to, and then pitching out like, hey, I know that you're going to be doing this upcoming March. We'd love to contribute, you know, something like this. We have, you know, our actual, you know, first party research that we'd love to share with you. Anything again that you can provide and make the life of that editor easier, you know, the better. And you know, that's step one, just getting them to know who you are and that you could potentially help them. Mm-hmm. And then it's really about a relationship, right? They got to like what you're offering. Then once they say, yes, we'd like something from you, then, you know, you kind of have to follow other guidelines in terms of quality and length and anything that they require for the publication. And obviously working with them to get them what they want exactly. Until they're happy, and, you know, following up with them, you know, once you've actually submitted that, and then seeing it till the end that it actually publishes. And sometimes that process could take 3 weeks. Sometimes it could take 8 months.
Right. And you call them abstracts. Just want to kind of break down the
abstracts
terminology.
Is really just a general idea of here's what the topic I would contribute would look like.
So if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm in the business world. Give me an example of a topic that you would pitch if it was me that you were representing.
Sure. A lot of things that they like to see are, you know, really educational and focused on something actionable. So that's always good to, you know, give something that's actionable because people like to read those things, right? You know, what can I take out of this?
8 ways you can do this.
So things you could do things, you know, like 10 things I've learned, you know, from starting a business. Right. And then again, educating their audience, if that's, you know, obviously entrepreneurial audience that we're going after, and also giving something unique, right? Because there's probably tons of articles about, you know, things I've learned from, you know, running a business, but, you know, maybe it's within your specific niche. Maybe it's about, you know, running your business in a particular location, you know, something unique that will give your story a little bit of flair is always helpful.
And how long are the length of the articles?
It really depends on publications and your industry. So if you're looking at more consumer-based or, you know, industries that are more creative, you'll probably see shorter things like 600-800 words. But, you know, when it comes to industries that are highly technical, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, things like that, they're going to want extensive pieces, right? Because they want you to validate what you're saying.
Technical content.
Exactly. So those are going to be looking at, you know, 1,500, 2,000. Those are going to be hefty pieces. Got
it. And I know you said it could take anywhere from 3 weeks to 8 months. And what about getting, you know, invited to podcasts? I mean, that's another outlet. It's still the media. To me, it doesn't matter. It's on paper, digital, radio, podcast. And what are some opportunities there for an entrepreneur? I mean, that's still the same thing.
Sure. Same things. You know, being interviewed on a podcast is great. And again, it all starts with the same process of, you know, identifying which podcast would be good for us, right? You know, you would want to go on an entrepreneurial podcast. You're not going to go into one about, you know, plumbing because there's nothing you can contribute there, right?
I've had great experiences. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's great. But again, once you do that, and then again, you go through the process of finding out who is it that I would contact if I wanted to be part of their podcast. Once you do that, understanding a little bit of what type of content they like to do, every podcaster is a little bit different. Maybe they have a very specific format that they like to follow for their podcasts. So again, kind of tailoring your pitch, your abstract to that is going to be helpful. But obviously that means you have to do your homework, right? You have to listen to a bunch of their podcasts, understand what they usually do, what they like to see, the types of people they interview, things like that. And then, reach out, propose something, and, always try to go back and forth and, always try to be helpful rather than just asking like, hey, I'd like to be featured on your podcast.
What was the most difficult industry you ever worked in, trying to get somebody mentioned on a press?
Sure. I think manufacturing is going to be a little bit difficult from two standpoints. Obviously, when we look at content, there's an overflow of creative content, media, things that, are easy. Exactly. Those are easy. But not everyone in the world is going to be interested in how a machine works, for example.
Right.
So that's where, you have a narrower audience to play with. You can't have like, well, I could submit this to 50,000 publications. It's like, you only have a handful.
Right.
And then also, just developing that content as well. You really need those experts. So we work with, usually engineers at those companies to help develop that content because the editors are really looking for quality and real expertise. It's not something that you can just
wing it.
Exactly. So it is a little more challenging because you do have to have all the technical aspects down and the quality of the writing. And, on top of that, follow all their guidelines. So I would say anything in the manufacturing, technical type of things, it's going to be a little bit harder.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
What's
it going to be like in 2020? Is it going to get easier or harder?
I think it's going to get easier as people learn that it's possible. I think right now if we go back to businesses, they think it's not possible. You need a PR agency to do this.
I don't think so.
You need all these resources.
They're getting disrupted.
I think a lot of people think that's the only way to do it. So I think as people explore more and things are open, meaning you can freely reach out to editors. You don't need a special person to do that for you. It's going to get easier in terms of being available, but you still have to do the work.
Last question, and we can end with this. How does that help your SEO? And we didn't touch on that, which has a huge implication, right? It helps. So go ahead.
Sure. So that's definitely going to be helpful from an organic perspective. Remember that, one of the main aspects of what Google looks for, or search engines in general, is the authority of your website. And what is the authority of your website? It's essentially who else out there on the web is linking back to you, right? So what other websites out there are willing to basically put a link on their sites back to you saying that, hey, we're okay with, mentioning you and saying, you were part of, this content or such, or you provided something to us. And obviously the more publications, the more places you can get featured, there's more of those links coming back to you. And that's only going to help your authority. And also remember that everything you're doing is going to be relevant to your industry, right? So when you combine that authority, meaning those websites you're going to be trying to get featured on, they're going to be obviously very relevant to your industry, right? So that's already a plus. And number two, you already know that these are places that your audience visits and that are related to what you do. So putting that combined, that they're good publications that, Google likes as well, and that you have the right audience, it's relevant to your business, it's only going to help you build that authority even more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here.